This is a video of panels 3 and 4, and they've been put together in the middle. We'll do a little walk around and show some details, but 3 and 4 are the middle panel and this panel. This panel needs to be leafed, and these two panels are back here, and I'll do a video of those too. So what we've got right now is a very kind of rugged base. Now, when we're looking at silver leaf, this would be silver leaf compared to painted finishes. These are painted finishes through here, and this would be silver leaf that's placed over it. So you can see there's kind of a contrast. Those are going to get knocked down, so maybe I'll roll some mist of kind of a charcoal stain or some kind of a antique gold that'll give it a nickel silver finish. So they're not going to be always these mirrory bright silvers, but you can see this is the difference between the wash area. You can see the wash area has this very sophisticated kind of mica layers, some golds and very light gray blues, and then we get to these kind of interference leaves. So one conversation is, how much interference leaf do we want in the midst of these open, smooth spaces? So as you see, there's this very large open area in this piece. We've got a bit of interference leaf here that kind of starts heading off into the wash. I'll go over here to look at some more of that. Climbing up on the first step of the ladder, so you can see some interference leaf here, a little bit of interference leaf here, but we can, start tucking it in over in these areas. We can have even, a lot of distortion. There's more interference leaf on the other panels 2 and 1. But that's the thing I want to talk about, is how do you like this very smooth pewter-like finish, or do you like this kind of more like you're seeing here, these kind of choppy interruptions? Now the base of the piece in general, if we go to the proposal, is got a lot of stormy things going on, which is nice because it kind of weights the piece. So as we're going across here, you can see, let me back up a bit. It's very rough and organic. This is, of course, remember, panels, the middle panel and the second panel to the right. So it's got this very rough finish. Here's a close-up of it. And you can see the little tops of some of these textures have little leafed peaks on them. So that's that. So let's start walking around the piece, and we'll just do some close-ups and discuss some of these effects. Right now there's a good bit of this very light metallic, it's almost like a powder blue. It in person, this is way lighter than this. The camera's picking it up dark. This is super light. I don't know why that's looking like that through the lens, but this is almost like a metallic powder Wedgwood blue. You can see it'll kind of be interrupted and start having these antique golds and silvers. Again, these very bright silver tops that are silver leafed, those are going to be toned down a bit. But we'll just go through this and get an idea of the different effects. Or we're looking up at the very top of the piece right now. This over here is a mica rust type color, and this is some interference leaf here, where you can see we've got this charcoal brown base, this interference leaf wash, or this interference rust mica. This will probably get a little bit of a rust mica to kind of pull it down a tick. Let me get the proposal so we can kind of navigate the piece with the proposal. So when you're looking at this area here, we're looking at, let's see, this area right here on the piece. This little section here is this corner through there. So now we're going to be looking at the piece upside down. I hope that's not going to be too confusing. The rust mica is starts becoming kind of a rose gold and blends of rust mica and rose gold through here. And then, you know, we've got some antique golds, back to a little bit of rust. You can see some of these areas aren't yet leafed because we may not leaf them. This is just, you know, sometimes it's best to not just keep leafing and leafing, so it just becomes redundant. We want to have some unleafed areas. So like this little seam here has the top, which we're kind of referring back to the base, which gets a little more rough and unfinished. So let's go ahead and show some of this. Looking at the piece from the top. Okay, let's walk around the side. Grab that. This is another unfinished area that's got some interference leaf. This is the charcoals, some just golds and stormy things. I'm gonna, let's see, this here, this section that we're looking at here is this area on the piece, right? Well, anyway, this is a different design, but it's the stains we're going with. This was the more preferred color treatment, but we're going with it. The cuts may be slightly different. Okay, now we're over here. We're looking at this section here of the piece. So this may be just tipped with silver mica instead of all leafed, because there is kind of a gold, warm, more strong section that's not all silver. So one question would be, is do we want to capture this kind of browner, golder type thing going on here, or do we just want to just keep leafing everything? So that's how that looks right now. And there's the panel number 5 that goes here. Get some close-ups on some of these color details at the base. Now here's one, let me get up this ladder so we can get a better view of it. Now, one question I have is this. See this, the seam? We have a little shadow and a little highlight. Currently, that is the organic seam, and it has kind of a cast pewter panel look to it. And this is going to be the most visible seam because it's you can see the seam here starts to disappear because it's just, you know, kind of lost in the textures. But when you get this large section, you have this more visible seam. And I think this is really one of the only, would be the most visible seam. The question is do we like this contour highlight type thing, or do we want to cut that? Now, if we cut it, we would cut about a 1/16 to an 1/8 off each side, and you get more of a precise, less highlighted seam. The only thing is when we get to some of these intersections here, like you see how that just flows, you'll get a little bit of a drop step because you're missing, and then you're missing that 1/8 of an inch or almost 1/4 of an inch after trimming, and these parts don't exactly match. They'll kind of have a little notch out that'll not flow perfectly. I personally like the highlighted seam. It feels more poured metal, like we have these massive steel panels, and there it gives it some gravity. It's kind of like seeing like an Asian 2.5D paneling system. But we can cut these. But if we trim this one, we're going to need to trim you know, every single edge, and we've got, you know, so many seams. It's a bit risky to do it, so that's one thing. But also we're going to lose some of the precision of the blends as far as these marks. So you can see, like, this is really tiny, but even this little piece here has a little guy here. You know, these fit perfectly. This little piece here has a little guy there. If we were to cut this off, we're gonna lose, and you know, this one may just stop all this up abruptly and have like a little flat side to it. So that's generally the questions we have about the piece. Is, do we want to trim these seams, all the seams, so they're straight and they don't have this little highlight curve? Do we want to do more interference silver in smooth areas? And generally, is the base too rough? I mean, it's going to be less rough as I tone it, but how do we want to tone it? Do we want to pull it much further down into some soft gray silvers, or do we like kind of the storminess that it has right now? Right now, it's set up to be very accurate to the more preferred color proposal.